Hello, my name is Jeff Mann, and in addition to my day job, I also study and teach Okinawan Goju Ryu Karate. And one of the questions that I get in various forums and that many other martial arts teachers get asked is, do you really have to learn Japanese and all of these customs and all of these rituals if we're going to learn this martial art, right? And so do you have to wear a certain uniform and have to learn the Japanese words for things and have to learn the etiquette in order to learn how to punch and kick and block and spar and all of that? And this question gets asked outside of just karate, of course. Taekwondo teachers get asked about this with regard to Korean, and Kung Fu teachers get asked about this with regard to Chinese. And so this question comes up in various forms, but I think a lot of times what it boils down to is, does counting in Japanese really help me learn how to fight better? The answer is maybe. And certainly not directly, right? We certainly know that you don't have to learn the Japanese words for things in order to do them correctly. But there is this important question that people ask, why are we doing this then? Why do we maintain all of these practices and traditions? So why does your teacher insist that you learn another language and insist that you follow certain rituals and forms and customs? The answer to that question is, I don't know. I don't know why your teacher does that. But I can answer for myself, and I can tell you why I practice this and have my students learn the history and the culture and the language of Japanese and Okinawan culture more specifically when I'm teaching karate. And I think there's really three things that I would talk about. First is you're learning about another culture. That's valuable, to just learn about another culture and to realize that not everyone around the world does things the same way. And to remember that people have other languages and languages work differently. And so it's just a good academic experience to learn about another culture. And that's always a valuable thing, no matter what culture you're learning about and what culture you come from. Second of all, this is useful cultural information. It's not just academic, right? This is useful information that you're learning when you learn customs and language. And so you may visit one of these countries, but if that never happens, it's much more likely that someone from one of these countries may visit you, right? May come to your place. And so you may have an exchange student from Japan or from Korea who comes and stays at your house or is at your school. And the fact that you already know a little bit about the culture can help you connect with that person, can help you make a friend, can help you make that person feel more welcome. And so that's valuable. And if you do get the chance to travel to another country, to that other country, you're going to have a significant benefit when you're already familiar with some of, as I said, the language and customs and etiquette of that place. When I took my first long-term trip to Japan, I taught at Senshu University. This was about 13 years ago. And I went over there and I taught at the university there. And at the beginning of my employment, there was a ceremony where the president of the university, it's a very large university, the president of the university had a small ceremony with the new international instructors where there was a handing over of the official contract, the official work contract. We don't do things like this in the United States. And so this was a rather serious ritual that would take place when they had international faculty there. And Japanese culture being so different from other cultures around the world, a lot of times it would go a little awkwardly. People would be, too rigid or uptight and not know what to do, or they would be too casual. And for me, it was a very familiar sort of ritual. And it was very similar to over the years in my martial arts training when a person would receive promotion to a new rank. And so when I met with the president of the university, I knew the appropriate way to bow a little lower and a little longer than him, but not to bow too much and appear obsequious. And I knew how to bow and say onegashimasu and to receive the document because I had learned these traditions in the dojo. And so afterwards, I was told by my unofficial cultural attaché that I had done a really good job. And that was a really nice experience, that I was already comfortable with that experience. And so whether it be at the university level or an exchange student or someday a business interaction, whether you're over there or they're over here, you can really help facilitate good cultural understanding. And that's something you can learn right there in your martial arts school. And so that's got value. The other important thing is that why are you learning all of this foreign language and custom? Well, you can get this under your belt, so to speak, and train anywhere in the world. It could be in the country of origin of your martial art, but it could be anywhere in the world. I've had the fortunate opportunity to train in karate in mainland Japan and in Okinawa, but also in the Philippines and New Jersey. And you can go there and the language is all the same. And so even if no one there speaks the same language, if they have that karate Japanese, if they have that Taekwondo Korean, if they have whatever it is, you can train with people anywhere around the world, and you don't have to rely on a common language. And so that can be a pretty remarkable experience. I've had students from my karate school who've gone and trained in the Czech Republic, who've trained in Denmark. I had other students who then went to Korea and trained in judo, which is a different Japanese art, but they already had this language and custom down. And so you can train anywhere in the world if you learn this common language of your art. And so that's a really wonderful thing. So when your teacher is telling you, learn this stuff, it's not just about blind tradition. It really is useful and practical stuff. But you got to be careful because it's not as easy as people often think to practice and participate in another culture. And I'll give you a couple examples. I had a student once who joined my karate club, and he knew a lot about Japanese history and culture and language, but he was also American and thought he was being very Japanese, but was actually being very American. And so the beginning, when we would practice our kata, and as the teacher, I would announce the name of the kata, and the students would respond and repeat the name of the kata. And he would wait about a half second after them, and then with a deep guttural sound, announce the name of the kata. So we're doing Geiki Sadaichi, and everyone would say Geiki Sadaichi, and then he would Geiki Sadaichi. And he thought this was like true Japanese bushi mentality. But in reality, no Japanese person would do that, even though they often use a loud guttural tone. The fact what he was doing was he was drawing attention to himself. And in Japanese culture, you never do that. There's a common Japanese phrase, the nail that pops up gets hammered down. And you don't want to draw attention to yourself. So people often think they're doing something authentic and are actually making fools of themselves. And so you have to be careful about learning that. Also with language, you got to make sure you're pronouncing language correctly. In Japanese karate, there's the word hantai, which means like switch, reverse from left hand to right hand. And somewhere along the line, I started mispronouncing that and was saying hentai. And hentai in Japanese is a pervert. And so that led to an awkward little experience once. In the Filipino arts, my friend Wes Tasker likes to tell a story about when he was getting into Filipino martial arts. There's a common partner exercise called hubad. And he walked up to a Filipino woman to ask if they wanted to do this drill together. And he asked her if she wanted to do hubad. And hubad means topless. So he walked up to this young woman and asked her if she wanted to practice topless with him. So you have to be careful. And then there's all sorts of cheeseball stuff that people are doing out there, trying to be extra Japanese or extra Chinese, and they end up being a ridiculous caricature. And sometimes it's funny and sometimes it's insulting. But all of us are susceptible to this. So what do you do to make sure you don't cheeseball it up? When in doubt, you know, bring it back a level. But in terms of pronunciation, and if you're using the right word, make a Japanese friend and ask them. Make a Korean friend, a Filipino friend, whatever it might be, and ask them, am I saying this word right? Am I doing this right? And don't be afraid to ask and find out if you're doing it right. And we make mistakes, and that's fine. But we always try to do better. Okay, so I mentioned at the beginning of this, when I asked the question, does counting in Japanese help you learn how to fight or how to fight better? And I said, maybe. Obviously, in a direct way, no. But when you do learn another culture, when you do learn how to count and practice. It's a lot easier to make friends. It's a lot easier to gain the trust and respect of your instructor. It's a lot easier to follow what's going on if you're in another place. And because I had a fairly good grasp on these things when I was in Japan, when I was in the Philippines and training karate, I learned more, and people were more receptive to me, and they taught me more. So did counting Japanese make me a better fighter? Indirectly, maybe so. But the other thing is, it's not all about being a better fighter. With these martial arts, right, a lot of times we're trying to do something about, more than just self-defense, more than just fighting in a ring. We're exploring an art form, a cultural tradition that's really rich and really broad. And so language and culture and etiquette and custom is all part of that. And so, you know, don't think just in terms of, am I going to be a better fighter? Do I have to do this? Look at it as an opportunity to become a more knowledgeable, more educated, and more culturally prolific person. That's my thought on the subject. Have a good day and happy training.